Today we're going to talk about a subject that is something of a dirty little secret inside the United States, but it is a subject that is absolutely critical to understand when understanding the history of our country, and that is the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II.
Atak na Pearl Harbor 7 grudnia 1941 roku był jednym z punktów zwrotnych II wojny światowej. Atak przeprowadzony przez Japończyków był szokiem dla Stanów Zjednoczonych, które uznały to za zdradziecki i niesprowokowany atak. Spodziewano się ataku Japonii, jednak nie spodziewano się, że celem może być Pearl Harbor. W dzień po ataku prezydent USA Franklin Delano Roosevelt ogłasza przystąpienie Stanów Zjednoczonych do wojny z Japonią.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Atak Japonii wywołał również lawinę antyjapońskich reakcji amerykańskiego społeczeństwa, prasy oraz samych urzędników państwowych. Odżyły uprzedzenia wobec osób azjatyckiego pochodzenia. Przez całą zimę oraz wiosnę trwała narodowa histeria skierowana przeciwko Japończykom, która zalała prasę i radio, a której głównym hasłem było internowanie Japończyków i osób japońskiego pochodzenia.
As soon as the war was declared and all this happened, the demonization of Japanese started more, And then there were organizations became super patriots, and this was the reincarnation of the yellow peril bit, Japs, kind of thinking Japs every day, and those cartoons about the horn-rimmed glasses and the buck-toothed Japs appeared, and eventually local agriculture groups thought, here, man, let's get rid of them now, and all kinds of legends were born in terms of who we were and what we were doing.
There were more Japanese in Los Angeles than in any other area. At nearby San Pedro, houses and hotels occupied almost exclusively by Japanese were within a stone's throw of a naval air base, shipyards, oil wells. Japanese fishermen had every opportunity to watch the movement of our ships. Japanese farmers were living close to vital aircraft plants.
W Japończykach upatrywano przyszłych sabotażystów i szpiegów w przypadku ataku na zachodnie wybrzeże przez Japonię. W pierwszych miesiącach wojny aresztowano ponad 2000 imigrantów japońskich zaangażowanych w działalność japońskich społeczności.
Were you home when the FBI came to take him?
Oh yes, we were all home.
When did that happen and what happened?
February 7th, 1942, 2 months after Pearl Harbor. We were sitting around again in the camp. It was still winter, and not too much to do outside. And suddenly, it was still morning, knock on the door, 2 men in dark suits were there. They'd answered the door, and they said they were from the FBI. They were here to search our place. At the end of the day, they didn't find anything. So they said to me, we're going to take your father with us. And there wasn't much I can do. So I said, yeah, okay, go ahead. And they took him. They didn't tell me where he was being taken. He was able to leave with us all the money he had, which was $1.43. So he left that, and they took him, and we didn't hear from him for about a week. And when we first heard from him, I opened the envelope and the letter, spread it open. There were sections cut out of it. They had all been censored. What was deleted or cut out by the censors was any reference to where he was or where he was being taken. All that was cut out.
Kluczową rolę w przyczynieniu się do internowania ludności japońskiej i Amerykanów japońskiego pochodzenia miał generał John DeWitt, który był dowódcą zachodniej strefy obrony. Pomimo spływających raportów o ich lojalności, zupełnie nie miał do nich zaufania i za wszelką cenę chciał mieć możliwość przeszukania i sprawdzenia każdej osoby japońskiego pochodzenia. Udało mu się wkrótce przekonać większość doradców Roosevelta, jak i samego prezydenta. 19 lutego 1942 roku prezydent Roosevelt podpisał dekret prezydencki 9066, który dawał generałowi DeWittowi możliwość usunięcia każdej osoby ze stref militarnych. Jedną z tych stref militarnych stało się zachodnie wybrzeże, zamieszkane przez ponad 90% osób japońskiego pochodzenia żyjących w Stanach Zjednoczonych.
Japs evacuate vital West Coast areas for the national security. At Los Angeles, 36,000 Japs see the handwriting on the wall and sell out their goods before their voluntary departure.
Ewakuacja nie była dobrowolna, była ona wymuszona przez prawo. Do obozów zdecydowano się wysłać ponad 120 000 osób japońskiego pochodzenia, z których 2/3 było obywatelami amerykańskimi. Ludziom pozwolono do obozów wziąć tylko tyle rzeczy, ile byli w stanie unieść. Resztę majątku musieli sprzedać albo dać na przechowanie. Ci, co mieli więcej szczęścia, mieli 2 tygodnie na załatwienie spraw. Często jednak ludzie na załatwienie swoich spraw nie mieli więcej niż parę dni.
Can you talk about that time preparing to leave for camp and what happened to the store and your
We had
possessions?
2 weeks. Those posters went up, and in our case, it was May 9th, and we had 2 weeks to liquidate everything.
Do you remember receiving that notice to evacuate?
Well, on February 19, 1942, President Roosevelt gave out this edict that we would be evacuated, but he didn't tell us when at that time. Late April, bulletins were put on telephone posts and everywhere that Japanese were being evacuated, had to leave this area by a certain day.
So you had about a week to...
Something like that. We knew we had to go sometime, but no exact date was given us until about a week ahead. Maybe 2 weeks, something like that.
They just descended on all vultures on the Japanese businesses, and they offered ridiculous prices, but we had to take it. Our meat case, the scales, our meat slicer, our cash register, $25 my mother got. And our grocery stock, I think she got several pennies on the dollar. So we didn't get much out of the market at the store at all.
And what happened to the store at this time?
We had sold it when we evacuated. We had sold it to some Chinese people, but we only got 10 cents on the dollar.
So the Chinese family got a very good deal.
Mm-hmm.
So you sold it for 1/10 what it was worth?
Yes.
My daughter couldn't understand why we had to go to camp. She said, I'm American, but how can you explain? You can't say, well, you're Japanese, you're American, but of course the Issei's would say, well, now look, what good is your citizenship? You kept saying you're American and you have all the rights and you're so proud you're American, but now you're just as Japanese as the rest of us. And that was one thing the Issei's kept telling us, that our citizenship meant nothing then. Even if you had a very little Japanese blood, you still had to go to camp.
Zaczęła się wywózka. Ludzi wywożono autobusami, pociągami oraz innymi środkami transportu. Nie wiedzieli, dokąd się udają oraz na jak długo. Nie było żadnych procesów, przesłuchań oraz żadnych informacji na temat miejsca ich przyszłego pobytu. Wywiezienie poza strefę militarną, zwane przez amerykańską propagandę ewakuacją, w pierwszej kolejności obejmowało umieszczenie osób japońskiego pochodzenia w obozach tymczasowych.
Now they were taken to racetracks and fairgrounds where the Army almost overnight had built assembly centers. They lived here until new pioneer communities could be completed on federally owned lands in the interior.
I don't remember whether they fed us on the train, but the next morning we arrived at the Portland Expo Center, which was then a wide livestock exposition. It was a huge barn, and the train came to a jerking stop, and we were herded off and went through some iron gates and into this huge expanse of a livestock barn. And there we were first given some, I don't remember that, I think they were like burlap bags, which we stuffed with straw by the front door, and then we went to our assigned cubicle, which was a horse stall. It really was a very miserable existence. We all tried to get outside as much as we could, but there wasn't much space between the outside walls of this huge barn and the metal fence that enclosed it. So it was not very gracious living, I'd say.
Living arrangements were, lousy. You had no privacy. The bathhouses had shower stalls. I can't recall. I think in the men's, they probably had a half a dozen shower outlets, but no partitions. And so it was all communal. Even the toilets, I think, probably there were half a dozen or 8 commodes lined up and no partitions. And, well, the eating arrangement was another large communal kind of thing. We had, what did I say, 3,700 population in the assembly center, and the eating arrangement, the dining hall, was set up so that they could feed 2,000 people at one time. And the tables were like picnic tables. And so, seat 6 to 8 people at one time. But having a mealtime situation like that, and our life, or my life, within the assembly center was pretty independent of parental control. So the parental control and the discipline under which we grew up evaporated. It was gone.
When we first went to Puyallup, it was really kind of horrifying because, geez, we were going to live in shacks that were worse than anything we ever had, worse than any outbuildings that I've seen on people's farms. And the first thing we were asked to do was to get ourselves a mattress cover and go fill it with hay at this great big hay pile, the rooms were really cubby holes. I mean, they weren't really this size, and four of us slept in that thing. And there was once you put the beds out, heck, there was hardly any room for moving.
Internowani przebywali w obozach tymczasowych kilka miesięcy. Na początku jesieni 1942 roku przetransportowano ich do 10 obozów rozsianych po terytorium Stanów Zjednoczonych.
Meanwhile, in Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, and elsewhere, quarters were being built where they would have an opportunity to work and more space in which to live. When word came that these new homes were ready, the final movement began. At each relocation center, evacuees were met by an advance contingent of Japanese who had arrived some days earlier and who now acted as guides. Naturally, the newcomers looked about with some curiosity. They were in a new area, on land that was raw, untamed, but full of opportunity. Here they would build schools, educate their children, reclaim the desert.
As we entered, there were soldiers lined up with guns and barbed wires all the way around the camp, and guard towers at strategic points to watch us. And everything was pointed inward, not outward. And they were telling us, well, we're protecting you, but it sure didn't look like it.
When you first saw the camp, what did you think?
Well, it was very, very discouraging because of, as I say, the wind and the dust, the dust storm. And you must remember that the camp was still under construction. Therefore, all this dust was being created with the wind blowing it up. It was just a terrible mess.
Each family, upon arrival at a relocation center, was assigned to a single-room compartment, about 20 by 25 feet. Barren, unattractive. A stove, a light bulb, cots, mattresses, and blankets. Those were the things provided by the government. The 300 or so residents of each block eat in a mess hall, cafeteria style. Rough wooden tables with attached benches. The food is nourishing, but simple. A maximum of 45 cents a day per person is allowed for food, and the actual cost is considerably less than this, for an increasing amount of the food is produced at the centers. A combination of Oriental dishes to meet the tastes of the Issei, born in Japan, and of American-type dishes to satisfy the Nisei, born in America. Those who work are paid. Wages by outside standards are low. $12 a month for beginners, $16 a month for most of the workers, and $19 for professional people such as doctors and others on skilled or difficult work. After working hours, over weekends, a relocation center is the scene of baseball and softball games by the dozen. The teams are counted by the hundreds. The evacuees have provided practically all of their own equipment, for little government money has been spent for strictly recreational purposes. About half of the evacuated people were farm folk, skilled producers of vegetables, fruits, and other crops. They had made desert lands productive before, and around the relocation centers they could and did do it again by the application of hard work and water for irrigation. At the two centers in Arkansas, they have introduced Western-type irrigation and succeeded in producing vegetables in the heat of midsummer, when ordinary production methods are not successful. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, corn, melons, and many other crops have been grown on land that a year or 2 years ago was unproductive.
There were good times and bad times. The good times were that we used to have dances and socialize, and that would break the monotony or the depressing thoughts of being in a camp.
What were your rooms like?
Just one room, bare room, with a potbelly stove in the middle and cots. That's all. No chairs, no tables. One light hanging from the ceiling. One bare light.
It wasn't too bad at the beginning because it wasn't that windy. But once the wind whipped up, and being tar paper and a single layer, dust came in all over. There was no way of stopping it. And so the dust was the biggest enemy.
The bathrooms were we had to go outside, walk about 50, 75 feet to get to the bathroom. We had no plumbing, no faucet, no water inside the room.
After, then the winter came, and then it became cold. But fortunately, they gave us one pot-belly stove for every apartment, and that was good enough to keep us warm.
I guess all I do was playing baseball or football or walking around with a group. Oh, we had to go to school too. Yeah, we were in school too. So all of the day was taken up in school and a little bit of time playing baseball, football, or basketball. Other than that, and dancing at nights. Not every night, but you know, I think weekends only.
First thing we says, hey, we better work in the kitchen. We better get better food. So, well, not all of us, but I volunteered for kitchen. So, but
what did you do in the kitchen?
Dishwashing.
That's all?
Yeah, dishwashing. Yeah, for $16 a month, I guess.
Or
Yeah, my dad was a carpenter. He was a foreman of a crew that was covering up the inside walls with a plasterboard or ceiling. Yeah, he got $19. Foreman, $19, just like a doctor. And like us, $16.
Well, soon after we got into camp and settled down a little bit, I mean, there was a call for some farm release workers to go out and harvest spuds and sugar beets in the area. And so the first opportunity that came along, a group of us got together and decided that we would like to go to the harvest.
You said that you kind of appreciated Manzanar for the fact that it freed you from a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah, because, you know, when we're outside, my brother, my sister, and I, we used to pool our money to support the family. But I was responsible to pay the electric bills and all the... So when I went to Manzanar, oh hell, yeah, you got the free food and place to stay and no electrical bills to pay and no gas bills or anything because no automobile. Oh yeah, it was really great because that was a real responsibility gone, and I was just felt like a free man. Yeah, I really enjoyed it because that was a big burden off my shoulder.
What about your mother? How did she occupy her days?
Well, my mother had a very hard time in Topaz, and the stress of incarceration and being called the enemy, and why was the government doing to this? She was a college person, so she knew her rights, and it just affected her to the point where she couldn't carry on, and she never did recover from that. So my mother was a real casualty of Topaz, and I'm sure there were many others too. Yeah.
And the one thing I remember about school is we were in a concentration camp, but every morning we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, even being in a concentration camp. You know the words to the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? You know. It's crazy. So I still remember that very vividly.
So you felt that as a 12, 13-year-old?
Yeah. For the irony of honoring the flag and honoring America and being in a concentration camp.
Obozy funkcjonowały do końca II wojny światowej. Większość z nich zamknięto do końca 1945 roku, jednak ostatni obóz zakończył swoje funkcjonowanie dopiero w marcu 1946 roku. Przez następne 40 lat japońska mniejszość dążyła do otrzymania przeprosin od rządu Stanów Zjednoczonych oraz rekompensat za utracone mienie. W końcu w 1988 roku z inicjatywy kongresmena japońskiego pochodzenia Normana Minety, który sam przebywał w obozie, kongres większością głosów uchwalił ustawę, która obligowała do wypłacenia $20,000 rekompensaty każdej osobie, która przebywała w obozach.
More than 40 years ago, shortly after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry living in the United States were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in makeshift internment camps. This action was taken without trial, without jury. It was based solely on race, for these 120,000 were Americans of Japanese descent. The legislation that I am about to sign provides for a restitution payment to each of the 60,000 survivors, surviving Japanese Americans of the 120,000 who were relocated or detained. Yet no payment can make up for those lost years. So what is most important in this bill has less to do with property than with honor. For here we admit a wrong. Here we reaffirm our commitment as a nation to equal justice under the law.
In retrospect, I can say a lot about that, but I just felt that all this liberty and crap was all crap. You know, it just, you read so much about democracy and all this, and it was a real eye-opener to see what could happen to citizens and what does citizenship mean. Because it just bothered the heck out of me to think that I tried to be a good citizen and man, they're tossing me into joints like this. I didn't like it. I can't imagine anybody liking it or having positive images of being locked up.